Before we do that, I would like to introduce somebody that I just realized was here. The Peterson Zaw and his wife Rosalind are here. Peterson Zaw was the first Navajo Nation president. So I just he went to ASU. He's an advisor to Michael Crow, the president of ASU, and I did some. He probably doesn't remember me at all, but I was just a little ASU student, grad student, trying to get some sustainable solutions on the Navajo Nation and work with him. But I respect him emphatically, and his wife Rosalind. They are just stellar representatives of the Navajo Nation and trying to do good things for the Navajo Nation, and as well as advise about Native American affairs. So thank you for coming to this. I appreciate it.
Questions?
Right here. All right, I have two questions. The first one is, I like your talking points and everything, and I hope you guys, of course, become elected. But what is your strategy to become elected? And the second one is, how can I help?
Oh, nice. I like that. So, our campaign managers are here. We have Sharon Egger and for Felicia French, and mine is Catherine Yell. They have envelopes, and they'd be more than happy to take donations because we're going to need money to do this. Also, I would say our plan is to talk to as many people as we can possibly talk to, knock on doors, and talk about what really matters in LD-6. I think that a lot of us know that there's a population of people who are not Democrat, who are not here. There's a lot of independents. But when you talk about what matters, guess what comes up when we're knocking on doors? Education, healthcare, the environment, water, roads, broadband,
local rights, yeah.
Local control. Those things matter to everybody. And that's what we're going to go and talk about, and that's what we've been going and talking about. And what we're going to need is everybody in this room to also be talking about those things. Because it's a big district, definitely we can't be everywhere all the time, but we're going to need to have people who understand what the mission is and the goal, and also to stay focused on it, right? To stay focused.
Yeah, and to add on to that, last year I went to the 36 townships I was describing. I didn't care if it was Republican, Independent. I just knocked on doors. And I had a lot of Republicans and independents that were Republican leaning said they would vote for me because of the fact that I was even out there. They had never seen a representative come out that far out to take the time and interest and to see what they had to say. Some of them were a little gruff at first. I was worried. I'm like, I need to be careful here. But then they softened once they realized that I cared about what they had to say. And I had somebody that almost slammed the door on my face, and my daughter was with me, and one of the comments she said was, "Ma'am, I appreciate your time, but just want you to know my mother is," she handled it better than I would if I say, I learned from her. "My mother is running, and she wins, she's going to be representing you as well, and we wanted to hear what you had to say." And the woman kind of softened after that. She realized, wow, and it's true. At the end of the day, the representatives should not be just for the people who voted for them. No matter what level of government you are, it's for all the people of Arizona or our district. It's not just about your base. So that's what we're here, and that's what we're hoping to do to win.
And one thing I tell people as mayor, I'm here representing people who voted for me. I represent a whole lot of people who did not vote for me. And I represent people who can't vote for me. So I represent kids, I represent people who are undocumented, I represent people who have prison backgrounds and can't vote. And quite frankly, if you live in Doney Park or outside of the city limits, you spend the bulk of your time within the city. I still represent all those individuals. Right now we talk to other people, other elected officials from all over the state. We all are going to work together because it's about our district and also our state. It's about everybody. We had you, and then we had you, and then we see you.
Actually, that was the same question, as to know what we can do to help. Because the issues, I think we're all agreed on.
Right. Yeah.
One thing I could say about that, Felicia and Coral have been talking about going door to door. One of the things the county party does is get you comfortable doing that. We have training sessions on a regular basis, and if you go to our website, coconinodemocrats.org, You can see when we have meetings and training sessions, we'll show you how to get comfortable. And Marty can talk about how she's done that over the last few months, and Dawn, and we've got some experienced people in here. It's really just talking to your neighbors and talking to people who are just like you and saying why this is important to you. It's probably important to them. And mostly it's about listening. So we urge you to get involved. It's all for the good of the country and for the state and for this legislative district.
So we're going to go back to the back, and then we're going to shoot over here to the corner. Okay? We see you.
So, there's an issue with our water that very few people know about, because over in Navajo County and elsewhere, they're beginning to mine for helium. In the process of mining for helium, they're fracking, and there are over, I think it's over 10,000 different synthetic chemicals that can be used in order to push the helium out, but those synthetic chemicals remain in the rocks in solution. Do you know where they drain to?
The Coconino.
Down, yes.
Coconino
And they all go into the Coconino Aquifer, and the Red Gap Ranch, which is our primary future water source under current plans, I think it will become reclaimed water. But the whole thing that happens is that all these chemicals, many of which are carcinogenic, they're endocrine disruptors, the compounds of emerging concern, we don't know what the effects are. And those are going to be going directly into our future drinking water. So I will pose a question which I don't have the answer to, but how do we begin to get different communities within watersheds to begin working together so that we're protecting each other's health instead of killing ourselves?
So, can I jump?
Yeah, you want to.
Oh, yeah, I totally jump in on this one.
Okay,
This has to do with water.
want to get it.
Okay, so there's also a deeper issue to the fracking that is proposed for the state land that's next to Red Gap Ranch.
Yes.
One of the reasons why Mormon Lake does not fill up anymore, it was Arizona's largest natural lake, is because someone punched a hole in the bottom of it. And so the water drains out, it won't stay in it. So the concept of fracking, the issue is also that depending on how they do it, we could actually lose the water that's in the sea aquifer in that particular section, and it can go to the aquifer below, of which we have no legal right to. So there's a whole bunch of issues with this. One of the things that we need to do, and that we can do at the state, is we can stop fracking on state land. Yes. Right? The state has control of that. The state representatives have control of that. Right now, they seem to be okay with fracking on state land. Another thing that we need to look at is AWR, Arizona Water and Resource Division, and we need to start coming up with rules for areas outside of active water management areas. The city of Flagstaff adopted those standards on ourselves, even though we're outside of these areas. We need to start looking at Arizona as a whole and all these different aquifers and all these different levels and start putting some parameters in place. Because there's some individuals that think, hey, it doesn't matter if we take a bunch of water from this section because they're conserving it down here. It does not work that way. And I don't want to get all wonky because I could talk about water for a while, but it's definitely an issue.
Yeah, and I can as well. And we have an expert here, actually, Kevin Gibson here and his wife, Deb. They're experts. They've been fighting this for a while. My concern is all that, that said here, what you said, what Carl said, but the other thing is we have got to stop putting profit before people.
Yes.
At the end of the day, that is the key. And you can't put a monetary, I don't care if you make $10 million, billion on that helium, whatever. How do you put that on the price of a human life or a child who is born in utero that has birth defects because of that, all those things. And it's been proven that those things cause birth defects and cancer and all that. So, no, and you notice how none of that's being done in the city of Phoenix or where the legislators live or anything like that, or where the rich people live. It's all in the rural areas where we have to suffer the consequences. But the irony of it is that Coconino Aquifer stems to a great part of the population, all the way down to even where I live, because it drains and it's going to hit us all. Just like the Horsemen mine up there north of Tucson. That's going to hit over several million people. They don't, but thank goodness they did put a hold on it, you know, because the Center of Biological Diversity had a stay, but we can't rest on those laurels. You see how when things happen, we have a stay, you know, we get a judge's order to refrain, but those only last for a short term. We have to be hyper vigilant. Democracy is not a spectator sport. We cannot sit back and rest on our laurels. We have got to constantly be vigilant and be fighting it.
And 40,000 more acres are coming up for lease of BLM land in December.
Can you repeat that, please?
40,000 acres of BLM land are coming up for lease in December. The Center for Biological Diversity has a lawsuit right now against the 4,200 acres that are already leased to the people who are doing Red Gap Ranch for you guys. But there's new leases coming up, and I don't know whether they're going to wait and see what the biological diversity lawsuit is or not, but there's December 4th, I believe, is when the BLM is putting them up for lease.
Where's the lady that was right here?
Right here.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. I remembered. I was like, she's right there.
Okay, this is, do you still do the garbage dump pickup? Like picking up things that have blown?
Oh, bulk. Oh, do we still pick up? Yeah, we still pick up out there.
How can I sign up for that?
Oh, you know, I just call. If you send an email to my office, I will put you in touch with the right people.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
5G. 5G.
So,
Microwave, radiation.
okay. So we've been preempted in the state of Arizona. If I'm following what the question is, there was a recent conversation at City Hall probably 6 months ago, 7 months ago, regarding the 5G that they want to put on all the telephone poles. And the only conversation that we could have legally about that was, did we want to charge them $50 a pole or $25 a pole? Because the state of Arizona has already preempted every city in the state of Arizona, and legally they have the right to use those poles to put up 5G.
What is the effect of it? Is there a negative effect to the 5G?
Yes.
There is a lot of information that says it is.
Okay.
We heard little information that said it wasn't, but really, to be blunt, it wasn't much of a debate. The state has already preempted us. It wasn't like we could tell them no, they couldn't do it. It was just, how much do you want to charge for the ones that are owned by the city with the licensing?
So you're just going to let it roll? There's going to be no fight about it at all?
We are preempted by the state of Arizona from telling them that they cannot do it. And what happens now in the state, there's called something called SB 1487. The entire nation is referring to this as the granddaddy of all preemption bills. If any city and town in the state of Arizona does something that's contrary to Arizona law, we get turned in to the Arizona Attorney General's office. The Arizona Attorney General's office makes a ruling, and if he sides with the fact that we're doing something that's against the law in the state of Arizona, that city or town has 30 days in which to correct their action. If they do not correct their action within 30 days, they lose all state shared revenues.
So basically you're state controlled then.
Which is why I said there's an issue at the state. You do not have people who understand municipalities and understand that local control is important. They're trying to govern everything from a state level because they don't have experience.
We gotta get you elected.
Because if we elect you, we can change the majority in the House and in the Senate and change some of the state control on these issues.
1487 is a problem. I sit on the Arizona League of Cities and Towns. I sit on their executive committee. I think there's like 20 or 25 cities that make up the executive committee. There's a total of 92 cities and towns in Arizona. We talk about this every meeting. And I'm looking at Tucson like, hey, why don't you guys go ahead and push the issue? Tucson can't afford to lose all their state share revenues. We look at this town, hey, Tempe, why don't you guys go ahead and push that issue? Tempe can't afford to use their state share revenues. There was a change made with the way we collect revenues here in the state about 2 years ago. We used to take all the sales tax, the cities and towns. We collected the sales tax. We took out our state shared revenues, and then we mailed a check to the state. 2 years ago, they changed that. All sales tax remittals go directly to the state. They charge us for collecting it, and then they send us our share back. So it's not a point of we'll continue to collect it, we can be sued and we can argue over it. They collect it. It's a point of them not sending it to us. It's a point of us not being able to operate as cities and towns. That's why you don't get people pushing some of the stuff that the state's doing, because we truly can't afford the lawsuit.
Yeah, and honestly, where I live, in a lot of the rural areas I visited, they don't even have 3G. We don't have cell service. We don't have internet. We don't have broadband. It's problematic for schools. Don't have that access. Hospitals don't have it.
Problem when we all get radiated.
Yeah, it's such a problem across the board. Sir,
what's your position on APS and alternative energy?
I'll let you start and I'll back it up.
Okay.
Because I have a bunch of thoughts on
Yeah.
that.
Well, it's funny because I even have this windshield thing in my car. It's SRP. And SRP is similar to APS as far as not really backing renewable energy. But back 15 years ago, when the federal government mandated that the utility companies had to have a certain percentage of their energy had to be renewable. So they were really pushing that. And that was back when solar was twice what it is now. And so the parity of solar and fossil fuel and renewable energy was not there. Now it is. It's much cheaper. Fossil fuel energy is much more expensive across the board than renewable energy is now. But the utility companies are not pushing it. They no longer get the subsidies from the government for that, and on top of that, they're just incentivizing it by making it sound like we did with the proposition, was it 405? I always get that last year APS spent millions of dollars to badmouth it, to misinformation that your rates are going to go up if we vote yes for this instead of solar, which was a total mistruth on that, and what happened is the rates are still going up, and then they're shutting off the energy. Okay. And that money, that millions of dollars they spent on doing that kind of thing, that marketing, false advertising, they could have used to buy. They were smart, like Carl said about the bags. Start investing in renewable energy. Because I'm going to tell you tied into the Department of Defense, because everybody believes in national security, you cannot go onto a military base in this country where there's not solar panels everywhere. Because the Department of Defense sees this as a national security issue. Our energy consumption, our energy demand, our reliability of that energy, and it's also tied the grid. Why do we have centralized energy when we should have decentralized? And this ties in. What could happen at the Pacific Gas and Electric? You have to shut off all these power. The APS was doing that a while back. We had brownouts, SRP too. Because of that, instead of having it decentralized and having individual neighborhoods or homes have those power generators, instead, have everybody that can have solar on their roof. Then you have clean, reliable energy, and on top, it's secure. You don't have to worry about the power lines going down or a squirrel eating at the transformer like they did in the Northeast years ago when they had that huge power outage or anything like that. So I just wish the power companies would get on board. If they were smart, they'd realize they could actually make money off of it and be the good guys.
So I guess I would add two things to that. One, I think the issue that we have with energy in the state has to do with the Corporation Commission. Right? I mean, if we really want to talk about how things should be regulated, why they're regulated a certain way, that type of stuff, really the power to regulate utilities is in the Corporation Commission. If we don't like the way they're being regulated, we need to change the Corporation Commission. Number two, I think that if we want to see a certain type of energy, if we want to see stuff being used, then we need to talk about the incentivization for that. How do we make that happen? I think as government, what we've done here in the city of Flagstaff is we've partnered with APS to make sure that we have solar on our buildings. We're looking at Red Gap Ranch right now in a partnership with APS. They're the ones that provide energy in this area to talk about how can we maximize the use of that. The issue is, what do we want to see and what it is that we want to move forward with. So I think there's two things, the Corporation Commission, and then what do we want to do to incentivize the change in behavior that we want to see?
Yeah, what do you think about the potential for biomass to help with the watershed management plan?
So there's some pretty exciting stuff happening in biomass. First of all, there was the concept that we're going to do biomass outside of Camp Navajo, right? We have a naval observatory and we have other research observatories. That's not happening in that area. I can tell you though that Winslow is now looking at a biomass plant, and there's a rail, and there seems to be synergy. There was just a groundbreaking for a brand new sawmill in Williams, Arizona, and there's discussions about this biomass plant happening in Winslow. It's going to be good for the region, right? So it might not be located here in Flagstaff, but it'll be located in our region, and it's going to bring jobs, and it's going to bring additional stuff. So that's pretty positive.
It's a win-win situation because you're also it helps protect the forest. Healthier forests, thinning them out now because we don't have enough water. The forest today that you see outside here is not the same as it was 100 years ago or more. It's much more dense. Now we don't have as much water. The drought is causing problem with the drought. You're not going to have enough. So if they thin it out a little bit, and it creates, like you said, creates jobs. That biomass they use, it creates energy. And it's a lot cleaner energy than coal or fossil fuels. It is.
Or just letting the wood burn.
Yeah, so letting the wood burn, just sitting there.
There's
Yeah,
that too.
yeah. So, yeah, it's a win-win.
Yes.
You throw a damper on the biofuel. You burn the fuel.
It does release carbon, but it's one of those net zero gains. That when it's growing, it's absorbing carbon. So it's like the net zero.
So if you left it alone, you'd have just the positive benefit of absorbing other people's carbon dioxide.
You know, that's true, and I want to recognize that is true.
Okay.
But one of the issues that we have here in northern Arizona is we have a major issue with wildfire. And the lands that we're talking about are federal and state lands. And if they were being managed appropriately, we could back off and say everything's fine. But I think if you live at least in this area, what happens after the wildfire is really problematic. It's one thing to look at from a tourism point of view, an economic point of view, and look at a burned mountain and try to figure out what that equates to dollars because people aren't coming. It's another thing when you have massive flooding that happens that takes out people's homes, that quite frankly took someone's life. Those are major issues. So if we need to do something, the forests need to be managed in some way.
It's past fire and flood.
Okay.
So I know about the connection between the changing the runoff from the fire and the flood that happens from a free array of raining thunderstorm cells. Right. So, okay. Just by the way, I'm aware of that. It's a package.
Yeah.
And single elements are elements of among 25 elements. And if you're going to solve a problem, you need to do it systematically and logically, including as many elements as you know, and deal with them holistically so that you can make an informed decision. Right. May I ask two questions that are somewhat related? Let's back up a little bit to the why. Is there an attorney in the room? No, I'm not being rhetorical. Please, is anyone here an attorney? All right, then I can't go further with that because I was going to ask for professional advice on it, observation on something. I'm not an attorney, so I don't want to go into it.
Yes.
I have one of my single issues. In my former life, I worked in prisons. I worked for the California Department of Corrections, parole, and now I retired for many years as a professor. And when I was an academic senator, I tracked the amount of state money going to higher education dropping proportionally as money was given to the prison system. It crossed the line in the latter part of 1990. And then with the growth of profit-making prisons, it has gone out of sight. Now, that is a huge, huge concern to me in terms of how the prison system, which is, to me, is bloated as hell, and the expenditures coupled with the profit-making component, and that's a drag on education, and we were talking about education. It's a total drag on education and higher education. I want you to discuss that issue.
The two main issues with that. One is obviously you're incentivizing putting people in prison when you privatize prisons. So of course you're going to want to put as many people in there because you're getting money for every person. So I'm in total disagreement with privatizing prisons. And that's obvious. We see the prison pop. The United States of America has more people in prison per capita than any other country in the world. even more than China and Russia, to my knowledge, right now. So your incentive, and then we need to also look at, we need to decriminalize some of these nonviolent crimes. They should. Why are they in prison for nonviolent possession of marijuana or something, or in jail, or they get to yes, or and it's not equitable. And so those are two issues that we really need to look at. And whenever you privatize things, like just like for the general VA, whenever you privatize things, you lose control of it. When the government, federal government, starts privatizing it, they lose oversight and control of things. And I see that time and time in the military. When I was in Afghanistan, we privatized our security, we privatized our meals and everything. We lost total control of it, and then now you got those $800 hammers and toilet seats and all that stuff, and then you incentivize them to make things that aren't quality or whatever, just like with the prison systems. So we have got to keep that oversight and control over the things that we should be in the U.S. government. But again,
But
no
you've
private
also
schools.
created one of the largest lobbying groups.
Yes,
The
as well.
Correctional Corporation
Yes.
of America and its affiliate. The lobbyists down there now at the state legislature, I mean, it's overwhelming.
When the third thing that we need to do with the third thing with prisons, it used to be that prisoners were correctional, meaning they trained them, they taught them, they go to school there. Now it's punitive. It's all about holding them, and it's not about how just making better criminals is all they're doing. And so we need to look at that aspect of it too for those. Go ahead, Carl.
So there's I guess there's some other nuances that I think that we need to be talking about as well, right? So first of all, definitely, if it's a private organization, they're going to be responsible to the shareholders. I don't know if anybody here is a shareholder in one of these private prison operations, right? And so, really, a prison is supposed to be for rehabilitation. They should be responsible or answerable to the society in which they are in. So having private prisons are just a problem. I remember when SB 1070 first came around, all of us were focused on just really the horrificness of this law. The following year, I decided to go back and look through the budget, and they actually passed $50 million for brand new prisons at the same time. You can't tell me that that was not on purpose. There was a reason why they did that. Through the Sunnyside Neighborhood Association of Flagstaff, we started one of the first reentry programs here in Coconino County. I think that it's deprivatizing prisons. I think it's making them be places where you're supposed to get rehabbed. And I think it's also making sure when people leave prison, they have the resources that they need to come back into our community in a way that's productive. One of the things that we do right now is we send people out of prison. They don't have a driver's license. They don't have an ID. They don't have a birth certificate. They don't have their prescription. They don't have a degree. If they've been in there long enough, they could have had one. There's certain things that they don't have. And then we pop them back out and say, go forth and be successful.
We don't just do that, we put them on probation, so they have to keep coming up with money, they have to keep turning up. And if they don't have a place to live, then they stand on a street corner.
It's
with
probably,
no bathroom.
there's no system.
So the probation officer can see them.
Yeah, so there's no system for them to actually be integrated back into our communities in a positive way. I also have a pet peeve. This is very specific. I have a pet peeve about the employment that happens within the prisons. Follow me with this one. So you have a job in the prison, and maybe you're making your telemarketer or you're doing something. You're getting paid 25 cents to $1. So you have a private corporation that we are paying to house people, and then they're turning around and they're using people to make more profit. Now stop and think about this for a minute. If they got at least a base minimum wage in prison, you could take 1/3 of that and maybe pay the child support that's not being paid. You could take 1/3 of that and maybe put in a fund so when they leave prison, they got money in their pocket. Maybe you take the other third of it and they're allowed to use that for commissary. I'm looking at this like, why is it that we're allowing them to work at these depressed wages when they actually need to get paid a fair wage? And are we not taking jobs from people outside of the prison?
Good point.
Are there not other small businesses outside of the prison that might have had that contract if we weren't using, quite frankly, slave labor? So, that's just a pet peeve of mine.
It's called indentured servitude.
I'm sorry, that's the new word for it.
The old word.
Okay, hands are going up over here.
I have an acquaintance who was in prison in Phoenix, and her job was to go every day to the Hickman Ranch and work cleaning up the chickens' crap. And she wasn't paid at all for that, but that's what she had to do. Prison stay. And the Hickman Ranch was getting
don't they sell eggs?
free labor.
Yeah, they do Hickman ranches,
I
eggs.
guess I won't be buying those.
Yeah, I know.
And selling eggs that they got subsidized for.
That's indentured servitude, right there.
Supermarkets.
No, that's less than a ditch.
Yeah, I know. It's weird. Does she get eggs at least? Yeah.
Like I said, I think that we need to look at some of these contracts within, because I think that those are problematic. Then there was, you had your hand up.
Yes. Political question for you. I hear that there might be a route leader entering your race. I'm concerned that the vote is going to be split. Any ideas, thoughts?
No, it's my understanding right now there might be like 5 people running for 2 spots.
Oh, really?
I mean, so there's one spot that's being vacated by Thorpe. We get 2 spots for representatives in this district. I'm running for a spot.
Just concerned.
Yeah, you know.
Is Ralph Snyder still alive?
No.
I don't mean that rhetorically. No, he's an older man like I am. Is he still alive? So you actually mean the actual Ralph Snyder?
No.
Oh, what did you mean then? Say it.
A tie.
There's an individual who's
A spoil. That's what she's trying to say.
Well, no, we don't know how many people are running, really.
Oh, okay.
I guess to put a finer point on the whole conversation, we don't know how many people are running, right? Because it's not over till people put in your petitions. But right now at council, there's 11 people that have pulled papers to run for council. There might be 11 running, there might only be 3. All I know is that I'm running for this spot because I believe that I have qualifications to help address some of the issues that we have. And that's all I can do.
Far better than your opponent.
I saw him and then we're going to come back.
So, Coral, we've seen that there has been some discord from time to time between the city government and the county government. By the way, I'm running for county supervisor in District 4. And one of the things that I want to do in that case is to improve communication, improve cooperation, because we have some major issues, flooding being one of them. But I want to hear from both you and Felicia, how do you see that county government, city government can work more effectively and in the process also address those issues that are being mandated by the state that really are local issues?
So I would say that what might look like discord, in my mind, really is not. You know, County Board of Supervisors is focused on the overall well-being and good of the county, and they have some different goals and objectives. The City of Flagstaff, we have a charter, and we're focusing on what's good in the City of Flagstaff. We partner where we can. You know, so we didn't partner on the jail. We partnered on the jail, the new jail facility. We didn't partner on the court facility. It didn't make any sense to the taxpayers in our city to partner on that because it would have cost an additional $20 million. We have the issue now that we're trying to figure out legally that has to do with the flood control district, right? We opted out of the flood control district in the 80s. There was ourselves and Fredonia, I think it was. We're like, we'll go ahead and manage our own flood stuff because we have a system to do it. The county was fine with that for decades. Then Schultz Pass happened, and the county's like, well, we want to pay more attention to the flood control stuff that's going on. So now they decide they want to tax the citizens in Flagstaff. So then we're like, okay, if you're going to tax the citizens in Flagstaff, we need to have a better understanding how the money is going to be allocated. Because we have a major flood control project, and we were hoping to do an additional tax on citizens to pay for that. So I don't really think it's discord, it's trying to figure out people have different goals and objectives and how those work and how those don't work. And sometimes you have to take it to court. And court has to be the one that figures it out. Or maybe the rule is antiquated and not working. We do work together on what we can. And what we can't, we can't. But I wouldn't say there's personalities or that kind of stuff. I think it's because we're different jurisdictions. The county is also a branch of the state.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they're an arm of state government, so they have different ways of doing stuff. Where we're going to have a public meeting and talk about it for 10 hours, some things they're allowed to just go ahead and decide on without much of public input. Does that answer your question?
Well, I know that there were a number of meetings between both city staff and county staff on different issues related to flooding. I don't know the details of it. I haven't been privy to that. And I know it's a complicated issue, but one of the things that I really want to see moving forward is continued and improved cooperation between city and council. Because we're really the same group of people.
I can tell you that I meet with the county chair. There's myself, the county chair, the city manager, and the county manager. We have a meeting once a month. You know, the issue right now really is that we opted out of this flood control district. And we've been out of it, and we've been running our own programs. And we have a stormwater fee that our citizens already pay. The county has decided that they want us to be opt-in, and there's a technicality in the law, so they just opted us in, and they started charging property taxes to the people that live in the city for this stormwater district, this flood control district. So some of our residents now think they're being taxed twice. So what are the differences between the two taxes? And then we were getting ready to go out for a special tax to finish the Real Flag project. We raised our stormwater fees to finish it, and now there's this additional tax. So our question is, now that there's additional tax, 60% of it, which is coming from the city of Flagstaff proper, we would like to see some of that money go toward the Real Flag project. Now, the Real Flag project is a $100 million plus project.
Right.
So this district only collects something like $6 million. And we're like, we don't want all $6 million. We understand we're part of a county. But you got to give us something because you're taking 60% of the money from the citizens of Flagstaff. So that's really what the rub is right now. And so the question is it legal? And if so, okay. Then how do you put a structure in place so moving forward with projects, it's a project we can like apply for the money and we can justify. And people were like, well, maybe it's not fair to smaller communities. Well, in Maricopa County, they've managed to figure out a way that the littlest town can go up against Phoenix, and the littlest town gets a grant to fix their issues. So there's got to be a way to do that. So that's kind of what we're all discussing right now. I'd be more than happy to talk to you about it.
I'd be interested in that model.
Okay, yeah, I totally will sit down and talk to you about it.
Is there a question over here?
Of all the issues, is there one in particular that presents your biggest obstacle to being elected?
For you, which one do you want? Yeah, just in general?
Either.
I think,
Yeah.
and one of the biggest obstacles is the spread out, the dimensions of this district. It's one of the largest in the country.
Huge.
It takes about 5 hours to drive from one end to the other, and we're driving all over the place. It's like I said, 36 townships. I have friends who are running for the same position, state senator or state house in Phoenix, and they get to go home every night to their bed and their dog or whatever, and they walk their neighborhood. They can walk it several miles, but they can walk it. We have to go all over the place, and it's so diverse. Like I said, there's middle of nowhere. I went out canvassing last year, trailers and outside of Tucson and Valet, and just I'm looking at the map and I'm thinking, wow, that's not a house. And I look over the little, there's several trailers all over, and it's just a lot of dirt roads. And I have a Prius, so for myself, it's very hard to get around like that. And it just, I think the spread, the diverse terrain as well as the population.
And I would add to that as well that there's going to be redistricting coming up soon, and we really need to be looking at this because the way they do this district makes no sense. Yeah. So you have Holbrook in the district, but you have to go around Winslow.
Yeah, you don't go to Winslow or
yeah.
Show Low.
Yeah, so then you have to go down to the little towns, but you get to Show Low, you go around Show Low, and you hit Payson. Yeah. So it's that kind of stuff going on that just makes this district super big, super long, super hard to get around, that kind of stuff.
Just for fun, maybe you guys should start working for the census for the next year.
I know.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, tag on to that and say, hey, by the way, here's our...
Where you can get paid.
Your food is coming, I'm told. I'm sorry it's taking so long. I think they didn't expect so many people to be interested.
This is very pleasant surprise.
They didn't know we were coming.
You're talking about a lot of programs that I think most people in this room support, schools, et cetera. The thing that came to mind is, but we're living in a Republican state. And all these programs that you're talking about are going to cost money. Do you have an idea, do you have a plan yet set in place? I know it's early in the game, that you could talk to us, folks like us, about, well, what are the financial implications of these plans, which, don't get me wrong, I support, but where does it all come from? If it's going to come from Phoenix, I don't see it happening.
One of the first things I always look at, whether it be your household budget or anything, government budget, my budget in the military, was where can we, the low-hanging fruit, can we conserve money? It's the same with energy and water. Before we start doing all these other extravagant things, let's conserve first. So we all know our household budget, you tighten, there's things you can do without. Like, a latte every day at Starbucks or something like, some things that you don't need every day. Well, the same with the state budget. There is a lot of waste there. Believe me, there's no doubt in anybody's mind. You see it. Every once in a while, I'll see a stop sign pop up or roads being redone for, they're not even needing that. This road over here needs it more or something. So first of all, conserving the budget, find out where the waste is first, and then go from there. And cut it, but always start with that before you even talk about raising taxes. And that's the thing. Everybody talks about Democrats are all about raising taxes, but it's not, and throwing money away with no oversight. That's the other thing. We need to start having better oversight of where our money goes and auditing. And I'll use the military as an example because I'm so familiar with it, and it's a grander scheme. It's the biggest, largest organization in the United States is the military as far as expanding and fossil fuels and all that. One of the things they just recently found out with the U.S. military was that there was over 15 million or something like that dollars unaccounted for. And so they're like, whoa, where did it went? Nobody knew where it went. And then they decided, well, we better do an audit. Then they came to find out they hadn't done an audit in about 15 plus, or 30 years, I think it was. And for over that, and you know how much money, billions of dollars goes into that. Then they decided we're going to do an audit, but it's going to cost us $9 million to do an audit. And that's the sort of ludicrous thinking and lack of planning and oversight that we have even in our state government. So we have to start doing that first before we even think about raising taxes. Now, after all that's said and done, we find all the waste and cut it. Then, yes, we raise taxes if need be. But I don't think there's a person in this room that wouldn't be willing to pay a little more taxes if you knew that this public education system would be funded properly, healthcare, and all the other things would be funded properly. Because you feel confident knowing because we have oversight and auditing. So that's where my philosophy is on that.
A good example of this was in the city of Flagstaff when I became mayor. One of the things was, where's our water going? And we got a bucket of water, and there's this little spot that says 10% of our water we can't account for it. So we're like, why can't we account for 10% of our water? And how much is 10% of our water? And where's it going? So we decided to figure that out, and we were looking at this like, hey, we haven't replaced the water meters in 50 years. And so we went and talked to the people who were doing the metering, and they were like, they're inefficient. Sometimes they're broke. We don't really know what's going on with them. They might have a leak. So we decided to put in a plan to replace the water meters with the new water meters that are all digital and technical. And guess what? We now know where the 10% of the water was going. So that goes back to what's this audit. The second thing is what I've been doing and asking people. So there's three parts to this. One is where's the money going, right? I've been talking to businesses, and businesses, the number one issue for mayors, I sit on a mayor roundtable about education. Down in Phoenix, there's like 15 of us, and they pair us with the big businesses, and we talk about the need for a qualified workforce. I'm looking at business, I'm like, what's it worth to you? Because we pay taxes as individuals for the education system, but some of you don't. But then you want the education system to produce people that can work for you. What's it worth for you? Because you say you're tired of having to pay to retrain people. You say that you can't get qualified workforces. You say you have to move. Is it worth you paying your taxes? I mean, it's a question. And what they tell me is that it starts at the top. If you have leadership that says you don't need to pay taxes, big businesses, they're like, we can't really say we want to pay our taxes to help pay for the education system. So I think that conversation needs to be very broad and had. The last thing I think leads to what Felicia is saying. How many of you here can afford a fire truck? How many of you here can afford a wastewater treatment plant? I think we need to start talking about why it is we pay taxes. So first of all, where's our money going that we currently pay? Who is paying and who's not, right? I think that's an important conversation. And then, why is it that we pay? I tell people all the time, I'm like, hey, I can't afford my own fire truck, you can't afford a park, I don't know anybody who can afford a public library. So we put our taxes in a pot and we pay that accordingly. And if you don't want to live in the city of Flagstaff and pay that, maybe you live in the county. And if you don't want to do that, maybe you move farther out. But there's a reason why we kind of all huddle together in groups and pool our money. And I think we need to start talking about that.
Yeah. This is like this at public education. Most of it's for property taxes. So children who are living where, like I live, in Pine or South Phoenix, their property taxes are much lower there than they are in Paradise Valley or Scottsdale. Why should those kids be penalized because of where their parents live? You perpetuate a cycle of poverty by doing that. Those kids don't get the same educational benefits of the kids that are the teachers, attracting those teachers there. So that's what we need to do about pulling the money together and seeing, and more equitably distributing it. That's not socialism, if you want to call it that. It's called taking care of your people, social capital. And the corporations, back to what Coral was saying about the taxing. Do you know when was it Amazon that wanted to? I think it was Amazon that wanted to have another headquarters, and they were looking at Phoenix. And the reason why they didn't choose Phoenix had nothing to do with that. They weren't going to get the tax cuts. It had everything to do with it. Phoenix is low on the education system. Who wants to if you're going to relocate with your company, just like when I relocated with the military, the first thing I'm going to look at if I have a child is the public education system. They looked at that and they said, geez, they're 49th in the country. We don't want to move there. Their employees didn't want to move to Arizona. So it had nothing to do with the corporate taxes that they would have to pay. That's what helps us with that. So that has everything to do with it. And they made you believe that, we can't tax these corporations. No, they were willing to pay taxes, just like Nike and over in Goodyear. But we don't have a good school system. It all stems back to our education system.
CEOs of companies, it's very interesting. It's not just that they're looking for the future workforce, but they themselves have kids that they're going to be putting in school. And they're looking to see whether or not their own child is going to get a good education. And they're like, yeah, no, not here in Arizona.
Or diverse
education.
Yeah, it's very interesting when you talk to the businesses about what they think about all of this, compared to what it is their leadership is doing.
Any other questions? Well, you guys are still waiting on your meal. I'm glad we're not holding you up, so it's not us. We're just trying to entertain you with our answers. Yeah, sorry, it's not better.
Talking about taxes, shouldn't there be an audit of the tax system as well?
Yeah.
Because it seems to me that we have so many exemptions and so many special deals that nobody really knows what's going on.
Oh, without a doubt. And sales tax is not the answer. That's a regressive tax. That penalizes the poorer people. If you have to pay more tax, if you're paying more income, more of your money for the basic necessities, then the rich people don't care. The people with more, that doesn't hurt them. It hurts the average Jane and Joe citizen by paying higher sales taxes. So sales tax is not the answer to our problems.
And also, just to tie in that conversation, remember when I told you that the state is now collecting our sales tax and then charging us to collect it? It's those little types of fees and stuff that we also need to look at. Because when we were collecting those, right, and then sending on the money that was required to be sent on, we had technically more money because we weren't paying this fee for them to collect it. So there's little nuances like that within fees even. So it's like, let's look at the tax structure, and then let's also look at the fees and stuff that we're charging. And quite frankly, are the fees paying what they're supposed to be paying? Because that's another issue that I see sometime in government. We have a fee here to address this issue over here, when maybe the fee should be over there where the issue is paying for that.
Don't pay the fee.
Mayor,
Don't collect the money.
Huh?
what do you think about the rear of the flag project?
Oh,
As mayor,
Oh, I'm 100% behind it.
pardon?
I'm 100% behind the Rio de Flag project.
Oh, and if the rear of the flag go through town?
So we had a 6-hour meeting on Tuesday where we talked about the Rio de Flag. And it was an update as to what was going on with the Rio de Flag, where we're at in the process, and those types of things. I'm going to just try to summarize it real quick. But what I said at the meeting was, this project has been going on for 20 years, plus 20 years. We have consciously been doing it 20 years. This project, to me, has a lot to do with social justice. The core of this project goes through a neighborhood that was historically a segregated neighborhood. This neighborhood was not in a floodplain until the city of Flagstaff allowed a corporation to put it in a floodplain to address an issue that they were having. I'm third generation. I live in the house my grandfather built in that neighborhood. The people that live in that neighborhood live right next to NAU. The neighborhood is being gentrified. People are getting $80,000 to $120,000 for the property that they own. In any other situation, any place else in the United States of America, houses that close to a university will be worth a lot more. So what you have is you have people coming in, they're buying these homes, they're tearing them down, they're building what they want to build. There was a house across the street from me that the family got $80,000 for. That structure sold for $1.2 million. I'm not saying that that family should have gotten $1.2 million, but I'm saying they should have got more than $80,000. So from
flooding the city.
yeah, and then okay, so if you take out the social justice issue, because some of us don't care about that, okay, you have $1 billion problem in the middle of the city, $1 billion. And what's interesting about this $1 billion problem is that if we have it, it just doesn't affect Flagstaff. If you talk to the mayor of Williams, talk to the mayor of Tucson, talk to the mayor of Winslow, it's a major issue for the region. $1 billion problem is going to shut our city down for at least a month, if not more. What are those other places going to do? I'm 100% behind the project. I've been behind the project. We're hoping to have 100% approved designs by, I think it is January, February. General Semonite is going to ask for $64 million to finish their part of it. We have our plan to pay our part of it, and I'm hoping we're moving forward.
I don't want to cut the candidates off, but I did promise them that we'd finish by 1 o'clock, and they may have other commitments, and they've been standing on their feet for a while. So I'm going to excuse them, and they're free to stick around and answer questions, but officially, this is it. Okay.
Could I put in one plug?
You got the hood.
So if I could put in one plug, the candidates need a certain amount of signatures to get on the ballot. We're asking actually that as many of you who can go on the website, because you'll be put on the Arizona Secretary of State's website. You'll see all the candidates that you can sign for. The congressional race, the corporate commission race, the U.S. Senate race, the state legislative race, and if you sign it online, you need your driver's license. Those are valid signatures right off the bat. If we get enough valid signatures, they won't contest our petitions. And we're expecting if we don't get enough, they will contest us. So this is great. If you want to sign on paper, I've got Coral's here and I've got Felicia's here.